Good afternoon, Frank here with yet another episode of UFO News Network Sunday, running up to the UFO report. I think it's going to be released actually this coming week at some point. That's my prediction anyway. They did hold off this week, as I suggested last week, due to Biden's travel to the G7 summit and his meeting with Putin last week. They weren't going to upstage that, so they've held on to it until at least this week. No guarantee it's going to be out this week, but I'm thinking that it will be because in the news this week, we did see a briefing to the committee in Congress. The House Intelligence Committee did receive a classified briefing from a couple interesting sources, the United States Navy, which you would expect, and also the FBI, which you wouldn't necessarily expect. Don't know what was in the briefing, but it seems as though not all of the material that was provided to this House committee is necessarily going to be related to the UFOs we're really interested in, the potentially ET UFOs, but the Select Committee on Intelligence, Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Counterintelligence, and Counterproliferation. Good reason to think why the FBI is going to want to be in on this if at some point some sort of terrorist gets hold of some sort of aircraft or drone and uses it to do some damage. They're going to want to stay on top of this. Let's not forget that it was their intelligence failing that led to the catastrophe on September 11th, probably the greatest intelligence failing in the history of the country, even surpassing the Pearl Harbor event back in 1941. So they have a good incentive to want to be on top of at least their end of things. Of course, their involvement in any potentially UFO ETs, UFOs, not very likely. They just don't have the gear for it, that type of thing. But they do want to be involved, and it seems as though they were at least adequate contributors to this report. They had a representative up there, and they briefed that particular committee. Now, some comments from members of the committee after the briefing took place. We're looking forward to having a public hearing at some point, said Representative Andre Carson, a Democrat from Indiana. I mean, there's some national security concerns that we want to take into consideration. So, again, some talk about public hearings. That's a good thing. I'll get into that a little bit more as we go along. The chairman, Representative Adam Schiff from California, it was an interesting briefing. I did learn things that were certainly new to me, but I think I'm going to leave it at that. Representative Mike Quigley, the stigma is gone. That's good news as well. Now that's a big change in policy, as I've witnessed about this issue in my lifetime. So the fact that they are taking this sort of thing seriously for the first time, I think is important. Then some not negative comments, but Quigley also went on to say, if I had to predict how the public will react to this, one word would be disappointing. I'm guessing at least what they heard really did not have that much to do with the potentially ET UFOs. Peter Welsh from Vermont gave a similar assessment. I'm not on the edge of my seat. Congresswoman Val Demings from Florida. It's always about our safety and security. Our national security is number one, and so that's really the area where we really focused on this morning. So there's that. Basically, there's likely going to be a big chunk of the report that is not going to cover potentially ET UFOs. That a lot of the focus is going to be probably on drones, on reconnaissance balloons, reconnaissance drones, that kind of thing. That is an element and maybe played a big role in getting the subject talked about a little bit more. But at the end of the day, that is really what we're interested in. The folks who in the military who deal with reconnaissance all the time. They've got their measures and countermeasures. The FBI, as far as any potential use of drones in some sort of terrorist attack, that's theirs to worry about. That's not what we're here for. We're here for the ET stuff. But also commenting this week was another Congressman, Tim Burchett, from Indiana, and he was a little bit less ambiguous as far as what he thinks about the UFO issue. So let's go to Congressman Burchett's comments.
Congressman, I know right now with President Biden, when he's going to speak to Putin, that he's going to ask him about the UFO things and stuff like that.
I think that's ridiculous. If the Russians had UFO technology, I mean, they would own us right now. They used to say that. I've heard people talk about how the Nazis had it in the Second World War. But if they did, they would have won. That is ridiculous. It has to be something that's out of our galaxy. It just has to be if it in fact is real.
And Congressman, you have always been a straight shooter. It's been like, I know when it's been bipartisan, but the one thing I've noticed is doesn't matter which president it is, nobody ever talks about the...
They always say they're going to do something about it, and then they get in office. And honestly, I thought Trump was going to do something. They was going to release the files, but they release these files are redacted. It's just a big blob of whiteout, and clearly something's going on that we can't handle. I mean, UFOs were in the Bible. Read Ezekiel. It talks about the wheel flying around. So I mean, they've been around since we've been around, and somebody needs to come up with some answers.
So even when something's supposed to be released coming up in a few weeks or months, what do you think is going to be in that?
I don't believe it. I think Roswell was covered up. I think more people believe in UFOs than believe in Congress for good reason, because of the jackleg stuff we do like that. We talk about we're going to release it and then we never do, or we release something that's so redacted that it's just ridiculous. The Air Force had a release on Roswell, which was the big deal, I think, from '48, and the big cover up there. And the guy that did it was a smart aleck, and he kind of smirked the whole time, and nobody took it serious. They ought to take it serious. The American public wants to know, and frankly, we deserve to know.
I think at some point it's gonna happen, man.
I think so too. I think they're going to release that. I think somebody's going to release stuff. The Kennedy assassination files are going to do it all, but we haven't had a president with enough guts to do it just yet.
So way to go, Congressman Burchett, laying it right on the line. He believes that we are being visited and is saying so rather unambiguously. And on top of all that, he's also saying that he thinks Roswell was real. So kudos to him for speaking his mind and coming out and saying what he said. And also kudos to TMZ, which normally it's a website that focuses on various celebrity misadventures, but they've done a really nice job in terms of getting these sort of shotgun interviews, ambush interviews on the street with various congressmen and senators, and getting their comments out there. And they have been interesting and very helpful. Sometimes they do say some interesting things, and Congressman Burchett was right there with them with some of the most interesting comments that we've seen to date. So very excited about that, and let's move on to our next story. Senator Marco Rubio, who is really one of the heavy lifters in terms of getting this report out there. He was interviewed again on the subject on the Fox Business Channel. That seems to be his go-to outlet where he's speaking the most. He was on with Maria Bartiromo again this week, and he had some additional comments to make as well. So let's go to his comments.
Briefing on UFOs yesterday. Senator, we've spoken on this topic before, and what we learned from yesterday was that these UFOs cause a pressing threat to America's national security, as the highly classified briefing apparently were things that those people did not know before. Do you believe that these unidentified flying objects are new technology from our adversaries?
I hope they're not. I don't know what they are. I don't think the Navy or the intelligence community knows what it is. But I think the point is you're never going to find out if you don't start looking. For many years, it was just being ignored. It was like, it doesn't make sense. We've never seen it before, so don't report it. We don't know what it is. Look, we don't need a report to tell us it's a national security threat. It's flying over restricted airspace, and it isn't ours.
Right. And they're flying over restricted areas. Well, we'll know more, I guess, in a couple of weeks when that Pentagon report is public.
Yeah, they're late. They got to hurry. It's been due already.
Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much.
Well, there you have Rubio's comments, and he's saying the report is already late, so I'm not sure where he's calculating that 180 days, what his start date is. It's obviously a little bit different than the one that we've been going by, because we've got it still as the end of this coming week. So good. I mean, he's pressing. He's doing it with some urgency. If you remember his comments from a ways back, he had talked about these types of reports often being late, but I don't think this one will be. Obviously, we had the briefing up on Capitol Hill with the House Committee on Intelligence this week, so I think this thing is just about ready to go, ready to drop, and we will see it coming out this week. Again, kudos to Rubio. Up to this point, we've talked largely about what we're going to see in this report, the possibility that it might be heavily loaded with some non-ET UFOs, the sort of thing that we're not especially interested in. So let's get back on track and let's talk about that. At his website earlier this week, Christopher Mellon posted a number of, posted an article with a number of questions for the military, for the intelligence community regarding the UFO topic. And the most important that I saw was, of course, another question about Stephenville. And there this is question 16 of his questions. This is his website again, christophermellon.net. Question number 16, a number of former USAF officers involved in UAP incidents report they were debriefed by OSI, which would be a FOSI, Air Force Office of Special Investigations, and required to sign NDAs. An example occurred near Stephenville, Texas in 2008. FAA radar and 30 civilian witnesses reported a huge UAP, but when two USAF F-16 pilots who attempted to intercept the object were later interviewed, they told cleared ATIP investigators they could not discuss the issue because they signed USAF NDAs, a thorough review of OSI's UAP files, and all USAF UAP NDAs should be the top priority for Congress and the UAP task force. And of course, that's going to be an essential tool if we do get to hearings, if we do get to that point. These NDAs, these security clearances, these things are going to have to be waived in order to get to the bottom of this in terms of at least any reasonably contemporary cases. And of course, Stephenville happened in 2008, and also implicit in what Mellon writes here, and I think this is interesting, that apparently there's been more than one instance, if I'm reading this correctly, of Air Force pilots signing these NDAs. And of course, there were at least a couple NDAs signed as part of the Nimitz investigation as well. Not by everybody, but by some people involved in that particular case. So that's something to keep in mind. NDAs and security clearances, those kinds of things are going to have to be waived. Now, interesting also, Mellon makes some excellent points. I'm not going to go through each and every one. He has 17 questions in total for the task force, for the committees, and for Congress. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but this particular question 16 is wedged in between a couple of questions regarding Richard Doty, who is a former FOSI agent who has spread misinformation, responsible for the Majestic 12 fake documents, responsible for the Serpo hoax, might well, at least in my opinion, have some role in the Wilson notes some of the hooks that were included in that particular document certainly are the same hooks that Doty has used in his past disinformation, so that he was involved in all that. Wouldn't surprise me one bit, or somebody just simply copied his style. That could be the case too. But regardless, I think this is a mistake on Mellon's part to include Doty in all this. He's been out of the Air Force for, I believe, since the 80s, and this goes back a long time. We really want to stay focused on the main thing. Again, I think this is a mistake. This is a mistake that I think a lot of UFO people are making as well, that they are getting focused on a lot of this old disinformation. We're seeing it popping up here and there, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit more detail now. And finally today, I want to touch on what I think is going to be a very important question as we go forward and learn more and more about UFOs. And that is basically we're going to have to answer a number of important questions, but perhaps the most important question of all is, what did the best informed sections of the government know about UFOs, and when did they know it? Do they have proof of UFOs, or have they been just gathering remote sensing evidence like radar and camera footage and witness accounts and just compiling them and sitting on them all these years? If have they actually retrieved a genuine UFO craft? If that's the case, then they have proof, and there's no question about that. But we also can't be 100% sure that they've done that. So either way, even the staunchest skeptics, I think, would at least admit that the government knows more about UFOs than they've been telling us these last several decades, the last 3/4 of a century. And we also know that the government goes to great lengths to retrieve foreign technology. And I've talked about some cases, some known cases of just that happening here on the show earlier. There's the Glomar Explorer case. There's the Soviet Luna 3 satellite, and the Tupelo spy plane, just to name three. There was also a case that Tom Rogan wrote about, where some mobile Soviet communications truck was basically fell into the hands of a DIA military unit. So that was a nice find, and we'll do lots of things there. Although I think it's possible that maybe somebody just stole the truck and sort of drove it into one of our garages over there in Libya. But regardless, there are certainly others, and all these years, a lot of those that we don't know about. And right now, we're in silly season. So we're seeing lots of irresponsible UFO commentators overreaching on their data, using old discredited information, disinformation, knowingly or unknowingly, as a source for their claims. So let's take a closer look and try to think critically how such a system of cover-up, how such a system might work. So we're hearing again about Majestic 12 documents. They are fake. They are known disinformation. That's been out there for years. Not necessarily talk about MJ12 as a fake document, but sort of as a catch-all phrase, a catch-all name for what might be going on behind the scenes. So a generalized name for whatever system actually is. And we're also hearing another name that's come up more recently, and I want to talk about that a little bit, and that is Zodiac. That is another name that has come up recently. It's important to note that the first time that name was used, as far as I know, is from an anonymous article in UFO magazine published by Bill Burns that came out in the early 90s. So I'm highly skeptical that name means anything too. I think that's more fictioneering, more disinformation. But a lot of researchers have latched onto that, and I'm just not solid that this information is what we need to be looking at. But whatever you call it, there has to be some sort of system in place, and it has to work, and it's worked pretty effectively, you would have to think, over these years. So let's try to figure out what that system might entail, and who might the people be involved in it. And there has to have been some other talk about that system being ruled and not answerable to any one person by permanent insiders, and that it's rogue, that there's this rogue system going on, and that they're not responsible to anyone. They're government insiders who have been there forever, and that seems highly unlikely to me. I don't believe that is the sort of thing that's happening. That's not the system, I don't think, and the reason for that is basically, if you were running such an operation, you would want the best information available to you. And if you were so secretive that how would someone know to get that information to you? I don't think that's possible. The good information comes in from the field, and how would you know it? Okay, and such an organization would have to be peopled by powerful people, names that we would know, names that we would easily be able to track down in both the military and the intel community. And you would also have to have a system to address turnover, because people don't stay in those positions for very long, maybe a couple of years, and then after that, this is a system that might well have been going on for 70 years. So how do you deal with that sort of thing? That's an important question. But I think that's how it's happening. You just can't have this private little group within the government just sitting there, and they're going to get everything. Because let's face it, if nobody knows who you are, how is anybody going to know to get you the best information if you're that secretive? You can't be. You have to have basically a very powerful day job, and that would be the best way to compile that information. That information gets to you because it's part of your normal job, and then you've got this ET UFO related thing sort of on the side, and when something comes your way, you are absolutely sharing it with the other people who are part of your little ad hoc ET committee. But you've got to have a powerful job. You've got to be in the loop on just about everything, because you don't know when and where new information is going to come to you. So I do think this sort of thing is possible. If crash landings have never been recovered, if that sort of thing has never happened, if crash landings have never happened, then all that we've been doing the last 70 years is collecting case files, some of which have remote sensing data attached to them like radar. But it's very significant to anyone who's looked at the best information available. It seems to me they would have concluded that some of those UFOs are in fact ET, if they've been looking closely at all that. And that would be the assessment. It's been my assessment from not even having the best information available, but that's been my assessment. I think it would be theirs, and they just they ignore it. They haven't exactly covered it up because obviously we know quite a bit, but that they're just basically in a state of denial. So maybe it's more of a denial than a cover-up. Now, if they've got the ET wreckage, then it's a cover-up. That is for sure. But if they don't, then it's they're just denying the obvious. They don't have proof. But they have lots of evidence. And I think as we go forward, we're going to get into that proof versus evidence argument. We've seen in papers some headlines, there's no evidence of UFOs being ET. Well, if you use a process of elimination theory and they're saying, yeah, these are intelligently controlled vehicles. No, they're not American. And no, we don't think that they're Russian or Chinese or anybody else's. Then what you're left with is that there's only one other option, really, through a process of elimination theory. So that's if that's the best information that they've got, then that's where they're at, and they're just basically weasel wording and saying that they don't have proof when they have plenty of evidence, maybe, or they do actually have the proof in the form of crash retrievals, and those are the keys to the kingdom. That is the big secret, but. as we go along, as we go around further down this path, we are gaining knowledge about UFOs, and that's what we're all in this for. And as this week progresses, I do believe that we are going to see more information about UFOs. And when we've got something else to talk about, if the report comes out this week, I'll absolutely be on here having read it and having blabbered through it and praising what I think is good about it and criticizing what I think is bad about it and pointing out what seems to be missing, because when you've got so many different organizations in the government being asked to contribute to this report, and then the director of national intelligence essentially acting as an editor from all these sort of sub-reports, these disparate sub-reports, some are going to be better contributors than others. I think that goes without saying. That's pretty self-evident, and we will see who holds up their end and who doesn't. And certainly as we go forward, it's looking more and more like the Air Force, the organization that really has the mother lode in terms of at least remote sensing data about the UFOs, is might continue to be a problem area. So that's about all I've got time for today. Hope you enjoyed it. A relatively short show, kept it under a half hour, and we'll be back as soon as, like I said, I'll be back as soon as I've got something more to talk about. So enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye for now.